Hey, I'm Troye Sivan, and these are my queer icons. First up is Marsha P. To me, Marsha is like the kind of ultimate symbol of queer kind of resilience and resistance, and the ultimate kind of queer icon. Marsha was at the forefront of like the gay liberation movement and the Stonewall riots in 1969. Every time we celebrate Pride, we're celebrating Marsha and her legacy and her fight for all of us to be able to live more openly and freely. And I think one of the biggest tragedies about Marsha's story is that for whatever reason it's sort of been pushed aside and doesn't get spoken about nearly as much as it should. She's kind of like one of the unsung icons of our community. For people like me to even exist today, there had to be people like Marsha, and I'm just like forever in debt. Next up is RuPaul. Drag Race, the show, has permeated mainstream culture in a way that I really didn't expect, and I really just appreciate it. I think that the show has great intentions. It's just spreading a message of love and acceptance and kind of celebrating qualities that in their contestants that I think a lot of their contestants would have struggled with growing up, and I know I struggled with growing up. To have a show put that on a stage and make that fun and so admirable, and to see people being so free is really, it's like mega inspiring. Like, everyone watches Drag Race. It doesn't matter kind of like who you are, how you identify, who you love, whatever. It's a good show. And I think that that has real value, you know? I think it humanizes the LGBT experience for a lot of people. Next up is Staley. I watched a documentary called How to Survive a Plague. It's all about this activism group called ACT UP that were in New York during the HIV/AIDS crisis. Staley is kind of like the lead in the movie and one of the people that they profiled in the film. It was honestly like a life-changing moment for me, because they weren't just kind of fighting to be accepted by their family or be accepted by the people around them, which is obviously a huge deal. But it was literally a matter of life or death medically. You know, they were trying to get the government to pay attention to this epidemic that was tearing apart our community, and no one was paying any attention. There's this really gnarly scene in the movie where they took the ashes of their past friends and past loved ones and threw them on the lawn of the White House. I'm just so grateful that they were there to do that, and they kind of rose to that challenge so that hopefully my generation won't have to. Next up is Princess Dianna. She was like a huge HIV advocate when that was not the done thing, especially not for a royal. There's this moment that's like a super famous moment where she went in and she met with somebody who had HIV, and this was at the point when no one really knew much about the disease, and people were afraid to touch people who had HIV just in case it was transferable in that way. And she went in, and this was like the princess, and she shook this patient's hand. It was just such a gesture of opening her heart up and like the country's heart and the world's heart to people who were struggling with the disease, and I really appreciate her doing that. And then as well, she's like a fashion icon, which is a whole separate thing. Elton John for me is one of the first queer people I remember. I remember being very conscious of the fact that he was not straight, and that was kind of like mind-blowing to me. And then I had this like crazy full circle moment where Elton interviewed me for Out magazine. We just like chatted on the phone for an hour. He told me that he really liked one of my songs, and I just got to kind of like pick his brain about everything from music to being an LGBT artist back then versus being an LGBT artist now, and family, and he was just super open and has always just kind of been like a loud LGBT voice in my life, and I needed that as a kid, so I appreciate him. Next up is Miley Cyrus. This one is for a very specific reason. When I was younger, I used to lock myself in my room and like go on private browsing and Google gay people or whatever, and tried to kind of educate myself on who I thought I might be. I also loved Miley Cyrus at the time, and she released this song called My Heart Beats for Love. She was like very Disney at the time and said in an interview that it was for her gay best friend. She was dedicating it to her gay best friend. I just remember being like, oh my God, she could not be cooler, and I so badly wish that I was Miley Cyrus's best friend. Just thinking like, if this person that I so admire, who's so successful, if she can be cool with this, then who else can be, you know? It really was just like a little hug and a pat on the back from my like queen at the time, and I just needed it. It was really nice. I didn't know any queer people growing up at all. I think I met my first queer friend when I was probably 17. It can be extremely lonely as an LGBT person growing up in an environment like that, and to have these people to turn to, even through the form of just like a Google search or something like that, is, I think, imperative to like the survival of our youth. And yeah, they all just kind of helped me find a sense of self and made me feel seen and heard, and I'm forever indebted to all of them. I'm Troye, these have been my queer icons. Let me know who yours are.